Nick, I got a question for you though. Do you think, are we seeing, United States hegemony fading, but because of that, it seems like NATO has been losing a lot of these PR fights to me, because it's a lot of leaking, of people saying stuff in the media.
Don't get twisted.
And you got this exchange right here where it's clearly anybody who sits and listens to that non-biasedly, just listen, you can hear what he's getting to. He's saying, what is the problem? They're just in their country and they have a mask and they feel a threat. You mean you can't even envision why they would even, and he will refuse to even acknowledge that. Go ahead.
The fact that countries are openly rebuking the United States in a way they didn't in the past shows that the United States have lost their influence. Because now you have countries in India. I'll show you guys what state TV in India was saying. I'll show you guys what state TV in Spain was saying. I'll show you guys what African leaders. I got another segment that we're gonna do here soon, talking about how they're losing the PR battle in Africa. Literally every other country except a heavily propagandized West, led by the BBC, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, in the UK and United States, respectively. Outside of those nations, everyone else is like, why does this regional conflict rise above Palestine, for example, Yemen, for example? Many is like, why is this regional conflict way more important? And meanwhile, the white countries, the Western chauvinists, is like, we gotta stand with Ukraine, we gotta be. And Africa's like, we got no problem with these people.
It's so obvious. It seems like they're playing pretend just with each other. But if you don't mind, I want to play it again, and I want you to get your reaction, because I can see you was
there were so many
reactions to like stuff he was saying. So I just want to play it again. It's only 2 minutes, maybe 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So shouldn't take that long. But just let me know where you want to stop it.
To look at this and say the reason that the Russian army is on NATO, the Russian army is at NATO's doorstep, is because NATO has expanded rather than the Russians expanding. That, in other words,
which is true.
NATO has moved closer to Russia rather than Russia moving closer to NATO.
Oh, go ahead.
Is that not an accurate way to look at this?
I think that's the way President Putin probably looks at it. It's certainly not the way that we look at it.
Quick pause. You see how facts makes, if you say the factual reality of the situation, anything that's not the Western narrative, they say you're repeating Putin talking points. I'm a black guy who lives in the Bible Belt. I live in Kansas City. A black guy who lives in the Midwest is somehow interested in spreading Putin talking points, according to liberals. No, I literally just bring up the history. Like this guy did, that NATO expanded to Russian border, as Russia has said for years is a red line.
Well, this is a propaganda tactic, so we can do a short little 60-second propaganda report here. This is a propaganda tactic, and what you do is after you lay your stance, you go anything outside of this, you label it whatever propaganda tag you want to give it. And in this case, they're saying Putin. So that's what you do. It don't matter what it is. It's literally anything outside of you saying you're for sending millions of dollars, or billions of dollars, billions with a B. I want to make sure people hear that. You're a Putin puppet. And you notice that, how many times have you been called a Putin puppet online? I've been called at least 10, 15 times. Go ahead.
You can literally show screenshots of streets named after Stefan Bandera. You can literally show screenshots of soldiers with Nazi bands. There's many pictures of the Western Ukrainians having Nazi tattoos, and you post these pictures and say you're a Putin puppet for sharing information. But telling them,
because anything outside of their narrative it's a propaganda tactic that, but they got these bots online that's doing it, and then you got paid people like Brooklyn Dad. So and then their followers just repeat, and then so you got sheep that's just repeating paid propagandist lines, and they don't even understand that's what they're doing it, because they've been inserted into social media to appear organically until we find out about Brooklyn Dad, for example. All right, so let me let it play some more. Let me know when you want it to stop.
Has expanded eastward toward Russia.
NATO has expanded, and the expansion has been a good thing for.
So the reason that the Russian army is at NATO's doorstep is not the fault of the Russian army. It's not the Russian army that's done it. It's NATO has moved closer to
I'm pretty
east.
sure it wasn't NATO who was ordering, upwards of 15 battalion tactical groups to within 10 kilometers of the border with Ukraine. And I'm pretty sure
In
it
their
wasn't
country.
Now, I want to rewind it back maybe 10 seconds because it was a part that I now think I have a point I want to make.
NATO who was
Go ahead.
ordering,
And that's I'm sorry, right here. Notice when he asked the question, this is a propagandist right here. What he's doing, and he did it again. What he does is, regardless of what you say, I have a line to tell you. You get what I'm saying? So he asked a question about NATO, and then he said blah blah blah. He was about to go into his PR spiel about NATO. He cut him off.
Yeah,
But that's what he was about to do. Yeah, that's what he
Yeah,
was about
and to
to
that
do.
point, that's such a good point. So I'm gonna add to this. I'll pass it back to you because there's some people that was like, why was you cutting out Marianne Williamson? And I explained later, and people understood where I was coming from while I did my post analysis, because I told you guys that she had a 20-minute interview and she planned on giving these long answers without answering the question. And as a journalist is supposed to do, you're a politician. I'm not here to be your friend. You answer the fucking question. I would let her go for like a minute or 2 minutes. And I'm like, all right, you're not near, and then I redirect. That is what you're supposed to do to these politicians and their handlers and their spokespeople like this. You're not supposed to be nice to them. You ask them a question, let them talk a little bit, and if they don't answer the question, you interrupt them. And
she used to Oprah Winfrey interviews. She used to Oprah Winfrey interviews being treated nice, and you're in a political sphere, and the pseudo left, NATO left is not helping by also giving her nice interviews. That's not helping because she doesn't understand that none of those interviews are going to be nice, especially in her position, trying to primary Biden. It's never going to be nice. And that was nothing what we did.
Yeah. Is the first hard interview she got, she crumbled. But that's how you're supposed to do it. When you got the people with these weasels, like this guy that we're looking at now, and we got Marianne Williamson who tried to dodge the question when I asked her about why should the working class fund a failed project to take over the Democratic Party. Then she go in this large spiel defending Bernie. Right. And then I was like, and she's like, I'm not trying to defend Bernie. I'm like, you did that literally unprompted. I asked you, why should people donate to you? So the only reason I bring that up is to go back to this point. The reporter did a good job. When you question these people, you don't fucking let these people ramble on. And that's all people like, oh, don't interrupt. No, you let them talk for a minute, 90 seconds at best. If they don't get close to answering the question, then you got to redirect them because they stalling. It's a tactic.
And you know who else did this? Jose Vega. And I just did the same. I will maybe we'll have time to play it later. But Richie, because I did want to get your reaction. But Richie Torres, he did the same thing. Jose Vega in that interview. But anyway, let's get back to the video. So here is where he's going to be cut off because he can see he was trying to go into a PR spill. But then when he lets him answer the question, he does it anyway. He just says, I don't think NATO, when he says NATO's when he says NATO's the one that's approaching their border, not them approaching NATO's border. Then he says, I don't think so. And he just refuses to give facts. He just goes into a spiel. And let's listen to that PR. This is all propaganda tactics, what he's doing here.
Who was ordering, upwards of 15.
I'm sorry. I didn't go far back enough.
The Russian army that's done it. It's NATO has moved closer to
I'm pretty
east.
sure it wasn't NATO who was ordering, upwards of 15 battalion tactical.
He's doing it here
within 10 kilometers of the border with Ukraine, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't NATO who put little green men inside Ukraine to destabilize eastern cities.
I'm pretty sure that Ukraine is not a member of NATO. So unless that's changed,
it's not changed. But I'm pretty sure the movement by Russia is
if NATO is moved east. The reason that the Russian army is closer or on NATO's doorstep is because NATO moved.
NATO is not an anti-Russia alliance. NATO is
that's a lie. And he calls it out. Let's play a little bit. He calls it out. He meant that the NATO started as a counter to the Soviet Union. And when you see the continued aggression by NATO, them continuing to advance to Russian border, you had literally Stoltenberg admit that the Minsk Accords and them arming Ukrainian rebels was all about them prepping for a conflict with Russia. Like, you have European leaders openly admit this. So how can you say this is not an anti-Russian alliance? How can you say this is a defensive alliance when you have NATO members openly saying that we gotta get ready for a war with China? That the NATO 2030 initiative, which I reported on a while ago, was to prep countries in their military budgets, which is why Japan doubled the military spending to get ready with a war with China. You are not a defensive organization if that is your main priority. But go ahead, let's continue.
Yeah, and it's so it's like what is it? The emperor is naked, or it's so being exposed that NATO is not what they say they are, and it's almost flimsy in the way that he says it. But let's listen.
An anti-Russia alliance. NATO is a security alliance.
Unfortunately, for 50 years, it was an anti.
I love how
Soviet
the reporter laughs there.
So
Where's
do you
the
not
Soviet
understand
Union
it? So do you not understand how, or can you not even see how the Russians will perceive it as a threat, and the fact that it keeps getting closer to their border, while their troops, I mean, the places where their troops are, you say their troops are, and they may have been in Ukraine and Georgia, are not NATO.
I'm not going to pretend to know what goes in President Putin's mind or Russian military commanders. I mean, I barely got a history degree at the University of South Florida. What I can tell you,
so this guy brings up the fact that Russia is not happy with NATO encroachment on the border. So this coward, he says, well, I'm not privy to the mind of people like Putin. Right. No, these people have been saying out in the open, will you guys stop expanding NATO? Stop expanding NATO. Stop arming Nazis in Ukraine. You don't have to be a special Putin mind reader to know that Russia didn't want you guys to encroach on the border. And that's what he's saying here.
But this, no, what I wanted to say also, and I wanted to stop it here, this is a propaganda tactic, and it happened to you, I think, with Robbie. When you go fact, then they start to realize this motherfucker right here, and you saw it in his face.
Yeah.
And you saw it in Robbie's face. So what they do is just pivot and tell a joke, and that's what he did. That's literally what he did, because this is now we need to change this shit, and because we're not gonna go back and forth with this guy. I'm hearing what this guy is saying. I can't combat that in public. There's no logic for me to combat what he's saying in public. Robbie did the same thing, Nick. There's nothing I can say here after all those facts I've been pummeled with. So I need to pivot with a joke. I'm telling you, go back and watch the video. Robbie does the same thing.
James,
so let's look.
James, I don't know if you can see it because I know you got a video.
No, I'm watching the video.
Yeah, James put a comment up here. I just want to comment on it real quick. This is a war of Russian imperialist aggression. Now, as the NATO chief himself will acknowledge, many experts will acknowledge, this war started in 2014 when the United States and the CIA got in bed with the fascists in Ukraine and helped overthrow the government. Now, you can criticize Russia all you want for getting involved in this conflict, but this is literally not an imperialist war. There are a lot of people who don't understand the difference between being anti-war and being anti-imperialist. You can criticize Russia for getting involved, but they are listening to the people in Eastern Donbass. The BBC did a story 8 years ago that I showed on here where there were a lot of people in Eastern Ukraine who wanted to be part of Russia. They had referendums. They wanted Russia to join. A lot of them criticized Putin for not getting involved earlier. So you got to acknowledge the West's role in this. And if you want to criticize Russia like people like Lula and a few other people have done, fine, go ahead. Enjoy your virtue signal. But as someone who lives in the West, who lives in the imperial core, who my job is to hold my government responsible, I see what my government has done to lead to this conflict that has taken countless Ukrainian lives, the fact that they support fascist Nazis, and I'm focused on attacking and criticizing that. But go ahead, CJ. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I think that's the point.
And also, just as a tip for anyone, because it clearly is not an understanding of what imperialism is, and luckily here at Revolutionary Blackout Network, we've covered this topic extensively. We actually have it as a part of a series. So you just go to I Am the Revolution. It actually was the first episode, and it's called What is Imperialism? And there's a couple of videos of scholars who are talking about it, and I'm also in the video, and we're just talking about imperialism. But go there to understand what imperialism, and we also talk about colonialism. So go there and watch that for an explanation of what imperialism is.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say on this, not Pat CJ, because this guy said Russia has criminally invaded, occupied, illegally annexed Ukrainian territory, which what happened by referendum, by the way. Putin is conducting a genocidal war against the Ukrainian people. And that, if you want to say that, that's okay. But these people, what I find interesting is people have no criticism of the 11,000 people in the Donbass that was showed by the Azov Battalion. They have no sympathy for the Romani Ukrainians that was killed and tortured by the Azov Battalion. No sympathy for the Black Muslims that was attacked by the Western Ukrainians. So their sympathy only happens on one side. The people who call for
most
peace,
of them don't even know those three facts you just mentioned. Most, and James Morrow may not know those facts, and I'm glad he's here so he can learn alternate facts. Yeah, I'm glad he's here so he can learn the actual facts, which he may refer to as alternate facts.
Yeah, I think some people say he's a bot, but the reason why I engage in that, and I don't spend too much time on that, just because I want to see the counter argument. Because
it's a teaching moment. Yeah, this is a teaching moment.
So if the people who care about Ukrainians or people like us who want peace to happen, you guys don't care about the deaths that caused by the Azov Battalion and the Zelensky fascist regime. You guys don't care. You guys don't care that they're locking up reporters, that they killed people they viewed as Russian dissidents and people who was helping Russia. You guys don't care about those Ukrainians.
Propaganda. That's all Putin propaganda.
You guys want to care about one.
They've been told that that's Putin propaganda because they believe people like this guy on the screen.
Yeah,
that's literally what they believe. Or this guy's a plan. He could be,
Yeah, it's fair. I just want to go through that.
But we do want to use it as a teaching moment. Perfect. The thing is, they're foreshadowing what the Tim Pool, Jimmy Dore conversation we were going to have. We're not covering the whole video. There's a couple of clips I have, and one of them they talk about how the Ukraine war started, and Jimmy is beautifully described it from the beginning. He says how people think that it just started with the invasion. It's like this started back in 2000, and he goes through it really succinctly. It only takes like a minute and a half, but it's every point he hits, and we're gonna cover it. So I would wish James would stay around for that segment because we're gonna cover and answer that with actual facts here. So in just a minute.
Yeah, let's continue.
Yeah, let's continue here. We got less than a minute left.
I'm not going to pretend to know what goes in President Putin's mind or Russian military commanders.
I'm sorry. I don't want to do the same thing I did earlier. I didn't rewind it earlier. I want you to look at his face when he realized the guys is just keep uttering different facts, and he needs to move on from this because he can't have all of this information in public. He literally can't have this being said. He needs to cut this exchange off.
And the fact that it keeps getting closer to their border while their
look at his face.
I mean, the places where their troops.
This one, his strategy is changing. Don't engage. Let's move over. Let's move on.
I'm not going to pretend to know what goes in.
So now I'll let it play without me talking. But that's what he's realizing here. It's no more exchanging in this guy because look at what he's saying. What is getting out in public with me on camera?
For 50 years, it was an anti-Soviet alliance. So do you not understand it? So do you not understand how, or can you not even see how the Russians will perceive it as a threat? And the fact that it keeps getting closer to their border while their troops.
He's changing his mind
the
here.
Places where their troops are, you say their troops are, and they may have been in Ukraine and Georgia, are not NATO members.
I'm not going to pretend to know what goes in President Putin's mind or Russian military commanders. I mean, I barely got a history degree at the University of South Florida. What I can tell you is
we all know you're a dumbass. We all know this system is not a meritocracy. We all know you ain't got that job because you're willing to lie on behalf of the government and because your daddy knew someone. We all know. Right. I love that you admitted it, but I want
right. But you see the Snickers in the background. That's hilarious to ruling class people. That is like, you didn't go to Ivy League. How the hell did you even get here, buddy? That's literally what they're thinking. It's a lot of working class people. Is like, where was the joke? I don't see where the joke is.